Yeah, well, very best of luck with the role and congratulations.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and I too want to wish the Minister well in her new job, and it's great to see you. So I wish you well, and I know you'll do your best, and as I'm delighted to be your first topical. And I know you're going to sort it for me. Okay, so Minister, the most common benefit in kind tax is that of a company car. And changes to the tax came in this month, and I have huge concerns about the increase in benefit in kind. It's kind of been touted as a green initiative, but look, I myself have my doubts. I spoke with one of my constituents, a sales rep for a Carlow business this week, who is on a 6% rate, which has increased in January to 12%, but the annual mileage is also increasing by 4,000 km yearly, and that's hardly great for the environment, and that's another issue that he kind of felt very strong on. He spoke to his company about getting an electric car, and anything that would be close to suitable to do the job would cost about €80,000. So the original market value would increase the benefit in kind and would cost the rep €1,610 net yearly in a time of huge inflation. And it's just another bill, he tells me, he can't afford, and he needs the vehicle to do his job. If this was really kind of a green initiative, I just wonder, why are we seeking an increase in the mileage bracket, or why are electric cars being dragged into it at all? Surely we should be encouraging people to use electric cars. When we are talking about electric cars, what is the status of the ESPS V22? It was paused for applications in April and reopened in November, and there was huge interest from taxi drivers, because I spoke to a lot of taxi drivers myself about this. Can you tell me if the scheme is successful given the high cost of electric cars? And look, again, Minister, I have had a lot of queries since, and a lot of people are telling me that they feel it's going to affect their job. It's going to affect particularly people more so that live in rural Ireland, like Carlow Kilkenny, where we're very much a rural constituency. But also when you look at it now, Minister, with the cost of living, every job now is crucial. And this seems to have affected a lot more people than I had realised, to be honest. I wasn't really aware of the scale of this scheme, to be honest. And it is a huge scheme, and it has had a huge effect on people. So I would ask that something would be done. I would ask maybe that we relook at it. I don't know, I think it does really need to be addressed, and I just think the fact that it's affecting so many people. And I know one particular man said to me the other day, a different man, he said, I have a mortgage, I have small kids, he said, my income is going up and up and up. He said, at this rate, he said, with all these extra taxes, he said, I don't know how I'm going to survive. So I said, look, I would come in, bring it into the draw as a topical, and Minister, as your first topical, I would ask you to do the best you can. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Murnane-O'Connor, and thank you for your comments. I'm sorry that I have my back to you. I'll try and speak to you in this way, and I will do everything I can to address all of the points that you've raised, and where I don't have the information, I will get it and come back to you in more detail. I think the important point to set out is that government policy has tried to focus on strengthening the environmental rationale behind all company car taxation. And in the 2021 Climate Action Plan, and I'm conscious the Dáil was debating the 2023 plan here the other day, but in the 2021 Climate Action Plan, the government committed to introducing an emission-based taxation regime for company cars across the board until the changes brought in as part of the Finance Act in 2019, where this was originally brought in. Ireland's vehicle benefit in kind regime was unusual in that there was no overall carbon dioxide basis in the regime. And I know Deputy Murnane-O'Connor is aware of the environmental reasons that underpin the other vehicle taxes that we have, such as vehicle registration tax and motor tax, and the structure of those. In those taxes, higher emission vehicles are subject to higher rates of tax. And the measure coming into effect this month in relation to vehicle benefit in kind extends that rationale to bringing it into step with the other vehicle taxes, which are emission-based. So in the Finance Act 2019, a carbon dioxide-based benefit in kind regime for company cars was introduced to commence, as you say, on the 1st of January 2023. From the beginning of this year, the amount taxable as benefit in kind is still determined by the car's original market value, and the annual business kilometres driven. But now, however, new carbon dioxide emissions-based bans determine whether a standard, a discounted or a surcharged rate is also taxable. In certain instances, the new regime will provide for higher benefit in kind rates, for example, in relation to above average emissions and higher mileage cars. It should be noted, though, that the taxable rates remain largely the same in the lower to mid mileage ranges for the average lower emission car. And of course, electric vehicles benefit from a preferential rate of BIK ranging from 9 to 22.5%, depending on mileage, whereas fossil fuel vehicles are subject to much higher BIK rates, up to 37.5%. So this new structure with carbon dioxide-based discounts and surcharges is designed to incentivise lower emission cars. In the new regime, the number of mileage bans has reduced from 5 to 4, and indeed you've raised that. I'm aware that there are discussions around the mileage bans in the new BIK structure, as they can be perceived as incentivising higher mileage to avail of the lower rates, leading to higher levels of emissions. But the rationale behind the mileage bans is that the greater the business mileage, the more the car is a benefit to the company rather than to its employee, and the more the car depreciates in value, the less of a benefit it is to the employee. So I believe that better value overall for the taxpayer is achieved by curtailing the amount of subsidies available and building an environmental rationale directly into the benefit in kind regime. So it was determined that reforming the BIK system to include emission bans provides for that more sustainable environmental rationale, rather than continuing the current system with exemptions for electric vehicles. So that brings the taxation system around company cars into step with other carbon dioxide-based motor taxes in Ireland, as well as long-established carbon dioxide-based benefit in kind regimes in other member states in the EU. In addition to that, and in light of the crucial government commitments on climate change, Budget 2022 extended the preferential benefit in kind treatment to electric vehicles now to the end of 2025, with a tapering mechanism on the vehicle value threshold. That means that the quantum of relief is phased down from €50,000 in 2022 to €35,000 in 2023, €20,000 in 2024 and €10,000 in 2025. This exemption forms part of a broader series of generous measures to support the faster uptake of electric vehicles by companies and to facilitate their fleet planning. I can come back to those in the closing remarks. But I think it's really important to say that this is an important part of our collective climate transition. The BIK charging mechanism was introduced in legislation in 2019, and it has deliberately given that 3-year lead-in time to allow for fleet planning and to allow for transition by companies to this measure.
Thanks, Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, Minister, for that very comprehensive report. And while I welcome this, I'm very much, as we all are, very much climate aware, and we all want climate action, and that's so important, and it's part of our duty going forward. But the biggest issue is, with this particular case that I'm dealing with, the closest car that he can get that will do the mileage. Now, we live in rural Ireland, so when you're talking about mileage, you're talking about a lot of mileage. So a car that would sustain the mileage that he needs, an electric car, would be up to €80,000. Now, as he said to me, he couldn't afford it. I don't know. I don't think his company can afford it. So we really need to get a balance in the sense that, while we know we have to have climate change and we're all promoting electrical cars, but we also have to make them within a range that someone that depends on a car for their living every day, that drives around the country, can have a car that is sustainable, that is climate friendly. But yet, at the moment, as he's telling me, he's a young man with a young family, he cannot afford an electric car. And if he keeps going the way he's going with this extra 12% on the tax from the 1st of January. He just said it's his job. He doesn't know where he stands at the moment. So I would say we need to look, while I welcome this, and as I said, Minister, I'm all for climate change, but we need to find the balance. We don't want someone in a predicament where they're losing money, they have a lot of bills to pay, they are trying to play their part with the climate action like we all are. So I just think this really needs to be relooked at. I think the price of the electric cars need to be looked at, and I think in years' to come, I think things will have changed, because I think we will have a lot more of them. And it's like the phone years ago when the mobile phones came out first. They were, you know, like everybody was trying to get used to them and whatever, and everyone is able to have a mobile phone now. I think in years to come, hopefully, there will be a lot more electric cars, and we all welcome the money that the Minister has announced there during the week for all these new stations where there will be people be able to plug in and use their electric cars. But I would say, Minister, I would just ask that you would look at this. It is a concern. I've had a lot more phone calls since about it, and I just think we need to find a balance here. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Minister.
Indeed, I know Deputy Murnane's commitment to the climate agenda. I've heard her raise it on many occasions in this House, and this is about a transition, you know, a transition model. You know, Ireland, we are firmly committed to meeting our climate goals, and a key part of that is the decarbonisation of transport and the large-scale transition to electric vehicles. And you're quite right to highlight the work done this government this week, or by the announcement by this government this week, around the electric vehicle charging infrastructure strategy and the additional work that's being done there. There are challenges in this transition for people living in rural areas, but I would also say for people in urban areas, many of whom are travelling around from Dublin, around Ireland, to do different pieces of work as part of their company obligations. And you're right to highlight the EV charging network in that context. But I think what's attempted here is a transition away from the electric vehicle exemption, which was introduced in the Finance Act in 2017. That's now been extended to 2025, recognising the changes that came in last year's budget. And there are very significant discounts available through that scheme, where vehicles, and I can provide you a note with the details of that, just in the interests of time. But I think this was legislated for back in 2019. There was a signal around the lead-in time. We have taken additional steps to extend other benefits to try to balance, as you say, provide that balance and provide that transition. But we must collectively make the changes that we need to move to a decarbonised transport system. And this is a big part of that, bringing one of the vehicle taxation measures into line with our other vehicle taxation measures. And it has had a considerable lead-in time. But I do appreciate the practical difficulties that it raises for your constituents and other people's constituents across the country as that transition. And if you'd like me to look at any more detail at the specific case, of course, I'm more than happy to. Thank you.